Among the earliest spirits to drift through Kanto's haunted towers, there is one that feels more like a cloud than a creature. That Pokemon is Ghastly. Its form is nothing but a round core wreathed in swirling gas, a design that seems simple on the surface but hides layers of fascinating obscurities when examined closely. In the original Red and Blue, this being was one of only 3 ghosts in existence, tied directly to Lavender Town and the Pokemon Tower. What many overlook is that it carried not only the ghost type, but also poison, making it one of the first dual types ever introduced. The choice was likely born of necessity, since ghost attacks were scarce in the earliest games, but the decision gave this fragile spirit surprising versatility. Its duality was rarely emphasized in official materials, yet it shaped how trainers interacted with it from the very beginning. The Pokédex often described it with language both poetic and chilling. Early Japanese entries likened its presence to cursed smoke drifting on the wind, while English localizations leaned into suffocation and menace. The translation choices subtly shifted the tone, making it feel like 2 different creatures depending on the region. Players in one part of the world met a mysterious fog, while others encountered a dangerous phantom with lethal gas. Even its sprites revealed details that went unnoticed by most. Unlike the flat, static designs of many early Pokemon, this one used layered shading to create a sense of swirling mist. On the small Game Boy screen, the effect was striking, almost like motion was implied, even when nothing moved. Later generations leaned into this identity, giving the creature longer idle animations than others, always making it appear restless, as if the gas cloud could disperse at any moment. Its association with the Pokemon Tower is often overshadowed by the famous spectral Marowak, yet this smaller spirit was the true backbone of the haunted setting. Appearing again and again in battle, it set the tone for one of the franchise's darkest storylines. It symbolized lingering spirits unable to move on, making the tower feel populated not by random encounters, but by echoes of the departed. Without this recurring presence, Lavender Town's aura would have felt emptier. Collectors of the trading card game might also recall how its early artwork leaned into concealment. The base set card placed the figure against a misty background, blending it so seamlessly that the creature looked almost hidden. Later artworks and Japanese exclusives pushed the concept further, using fog and smoke motifs to emphasize its fleeting nature. These artistic decisions reinforced what the games already suggested, that this was a ghost meant to be glimpsed briefly rather than studied. As with many early ghosts, myths quickly formed around it. Players whispered that if they encountered it enough times in Lavender Town, the true ghost sprite might appear more often. Others claimed that catching one at night increased the chance of quicker evolution. None of these rumors held truth, yet they reveal how this Pokemon captured imagination beyond its actual mechanics. It became part of playground folklore, as much a story told as a creature battled. Thematically, it represents impermanence. With no solid form, only a body of gas, it reflects the idea that some spirits are so insubstantial they can barely be touched. Even in later generations, the aura of transience has remained. Trainers may see it as the weakest of its line, yet the symbolism it carries of things that exist only for a moment makes it one of the most conceptually haunting Pokemon ever created. Ultimately, the obscure side of Ghastly lies not just in its stats or moves, but in translation quirks, sprite artistry, card design, and cultural myths. To encounter it is to brush against something incomplete, fleeting, and eerie. In the quiet glow of Lavender Town, It remains a drifting reminder of how the series first dared to explore the line between life and death. When the drifting mist takes on shape and menace, the result is a figure with sharp eyes, floating hands, and a grin that stretches unnaturally wide. That Pokemon is Haunter. Its design is more defined than its predecessor, yet still unsettlingly incomplete, as if a ghost were only halfway formed. Within that eerie balance lies a story full of obscure details. Unlike many sprites in the first generation, this one refused to stay contained within the screen. Its detached hands floated apart from its body, creating the illusion that the figure extended beyond the boundaries of the Game Boy frame. It was a subtle trick of sprite design, but it left players with the impression that this ghost could reach out at any moment. No other early design blurred the border between player and Pokemon so effectively. The Pokédex leaned into its unsettling nature. Descriptions spoke of paralysis or even death from its tongue, echoing Japanese yokai folklore, where spirits with long tongues licked victims into immobility. The connection to traditional ghost stories is rarely noted but clear, showing how the designers drew on cultural myths when crafting this spectral figure. By blending folklore with game exaggeration, they made a creature that felt timeless yet distinct. Even its cry carried a strange quality. On the Game Boy, the high-pitched, glitch-like shriek sounded unlike most others, making battles feel uncanny. Later generations preserved this tone, ensuring that the unsettling aura carried forward. Many players recall being spooked by that sound more than the visual design, a testament to how simple audio choices can deepen atmosphere. In the trading card game, this ghost often received artwork that was more sinister than its fully evolved form. Some cards depicted it emerging from dreamlike voids or looming behind shadows, emphasizing its role as a nightmare bringer. Collectors still remember those illustrations as among the eeriest of the early sets, especially in Japan, where artists leaned heavily into surreal backgrounds. Shiny Hunters 2 found it rewarding. Its shiny palette shifted to a more vivid blue, making it stand out dramatically from its usual purple body. For many, encountering that unexpected grin, glowing blue in the middle of a hunt, was among the most striking shiny experiences of the second generation. The shift contrasted so strongly that players often remembered it more fondly than the shinies of many other ghosts. As with its gaseous form, myths swirled around this stage. Some players believed that trading it under unusual conditions, such as fainting it in battle before exchange, would produce alternate evolutions. Others claimed that its Hypnosis and Dream Eater combo unlocked hidden effects if it fainted an opponent. None of these rumors were true, but they reveal how the unsettling presence of the creature encouraged superstition. Culturally, Haunter represents liminality. It is more than a drifting cloud, yet less than a solid monster, caught between worlds. Its detached hands symbolize incompleteness, always reaching but never connected. This theme of the unfinished ghost has roots in folklore worldwide, where spirits are often depicted as only partly formed, lingering between realms. Ultimately, the obscurity of this Pokemon lies not only in its folklore ties or shiny coloration, but in how it balanced menace and mystery. From its sprite-breaking borders to its eerie cry and unsettling card art, it remains one of the most haunting designs in the franchise. Though it may evolve into a more famous figure, Haunter continues to embody the spectral unease of something that is present, yet not whole, always reaching from just beyond the veil. Among the most iconic figures in the ghostly pantheon, there is one that seems to smirk from the edge of every shadow. That Pokemon is Gengar. With its stocky form, sinister grin, and long history as both a trickster and a powerhouse, it has become one of the most recognizable spirits in the franchise. Yet even with its fame, obscure details reveal sides of this specter that most never notice. In the earliest games, this creature was remarkable not only for being the final stage of a line, but also for how it was obtained. Unlike most evolutions, it required trading to achieve its form, a mechanic that in 1996 was as much about social connection as gameplay. This requirement gave the ghost an aura of exclusivity, since not every trainer had the means to trade. The scarcity made it feel more mysterious, as if it existed only in the hands of those who reached across the boundary between cartridges. Its Pokédex entries stand among the most unsettling, describing how it lurks in shadows and even replaces them, blending with darkness so seamlessly that victims never notice until it is too late. What many overlook is that these entries subtly shift in tone across generations. In earlier games, it is portrayed as actively malevolent, draining the life of those it encounters. Later entries lean more into mischievous qualities, presenting it less as a killer and more as a playful haunt. The tonal variation shows how the franchise has adapted its ghosts to different audiences over time. Design choices also add obscurities. In early sprite art, its proportions were rounder and less intimidating, yet promotional illustrations gave it sharper features. This inconsistency meant that players in different media saw slightly different versions of the same Pokémonday. In later three-dimensional models, its smile widened and eyes narrowed, cementing its reputation as a trickster that hides menace behind playfulness. The trading card game has long highlighted its sinister charm. Many of its earliest cards showed it phasing in and out of walls or manipulating shadows around it. Japanese exclusive artwork pushed these concepts further, sometimes rendering it in near surreal compositions where it seemed more demon than playful ghost. Collectors often prize these cards because they emphasize the eerie qualities that official games sometimes softened. In competitive history, this specter has always been relevant. Its combination of speed, special attack, and wide move pool made it one of the deadliest threats in early metagames. Shiny hunters also found it notable, though its shiny palette has long been criticized for being almost indistinguishable from its normal form. In many hunts, players only realized they had found one when the sparkle animation appeared, an obscurity that ironically added to its reputation as a hidden menace. Community myths flourished around this Pokémon as well. In early fan discussions, players speculated that it was connected to the ghost sprite seen in Lavender Town, or even that it represented the spirit of a dead Clefable because of shared body shapes. While these theories are not confirmed, they became cultural folklore within the fan base, reinforcing the idea that it is more than just a normal evolution. It is a creature steeped in mystery. Ultimately, the obscurity of this ghost lies in the gaps between perception and reality. It has been a menace, a mischief maker, a competitive titan, and even the subject of myths that blur the line between fact and fan theory. The wide grin hides more than malice. It conceals decades of quiet lore that make Gengar one of the most enduringly enigmatic Pokémon in the franchise. Among all ghostly figures, there is one whose form is hidden beneath a ragged disguise, pretending to be something it is not. That Pokémon is Mimikyu. With its crude costume resembling Pikachu, it is both one of the most unsettling and one of the most sympathetic creatures introduced in recent years. Beneath the surface of its popularity lies a set of obscure details that reveal how carefully it was designed to inspire both fear and pity. The very concept of this Pokemon is rooted in loneliness. According to Pokedex entries, it hides under its cloth because direct exposure can harm or even kill those who see its true body. It imitates Pikachu because that was once the most beloved figure of the franchise, and by copying it, this ghost hoped to attract affection. What many overlook is that this idea was introduced during the 7th generation, a time when Pokemon design increasingly embraced themes of social bonds and isolation. The disguise reflected both cultural commentary and narrative depth, rarely seen in earlier creatures. An obscure element of its design lies in the details of the cloth itself. In official artwork, the rag changes subtly between generations. In some images, it is more crumpled and worn, while in others, it appears freshly patched. These differences suggest that the disguise is not static, but something the creature maintains and repairs. This subtle visual storytelling rarely draws attention but adds to its lore. The rag is not just a symbol, it is an object actively cared for. Competitive history also adds obscurities. With the unique ability, Disguise, this Pokemon could absorb a hit without taking damage, making it one of the most disruptive threats of its generation. Shiny versions, with slightly faded cloth, became status symbols among competitive players. The color difference is subtle, yet owning one became a way of showcasing both rarity and power. Because the shiny was so faint, many battles required players to check carefully if they were facing the ordinary or rare form, a situation that felt fitting for a creature defined by deception. Merchandise and media also highlight the obscurity of this ghost's lore. In Japanese promotions, plush toys emphasize the hand-sewn look of the rag, reinforcing the theme of fragility. Meanwhile, in the trading card game, shiny versions often leaned into the faded cloth motif, creating debates among collectors over whether the difference was noticeable at all. This blend of subtle design and rarity made it one of the most talked about shinies of its generation. Community myths formed quickly after its debut. Some fans speculated that the ragged disguise represented an actual Pikachu doll once owned by a child, tying it to stories of grief and loss. Others claimed that the real body beneath the cloth was connected to other ghost types, perhaps Ghastly or Banette, though none of these theories were ever confirmed. These interpretations show how players filled the gaps in its story with their own folklore, turning the Pokemon into a vessel for personal myth-making. Even in the anime, it took on a unique role. Rather than being portrayed as merely tragic, it often showed fierce determination, battling with surprising intensity. Its ragged appearance contrasted with moments of surprising power, reinforcing the duality of pity and fear. For viewers, it became both a mascot and a mystery. Ultimately, the obscurity of this ghost lies in its contradictions. It is a Pokemon that hides while seeking attention, terrifies while longing for kindness, and deceives while remaining truthful to its loneliness. The subtle details of its disguise, the faint differences in shiny form, and the myths created by fans all add to its identity. Beneath the cloth lies not just a hidden body, but a hidden history, making Mimikyu one of the most symbolically complex ghosts ever created. Among the first standalone ghostly creatures introduced after Kanto, one spirit entered Johto with a haunting cry and a necklace of red beads. That Pokemon is Misdreavus. Unlike the Ghastly line, it did not evolve in its debut generation, instead existing as a solitary ghost surrounded by rumors and eerie lore. Hidden within its design and history are details that remain obscure even to longtime fans. In Gold and Silver, This spirit was one of the rarest encounters, appearing only in a single cave at night. Its exclusivity was so pronounced that many players completed entire journeys without ever seeing it. This scarcity gave it an aura of mystery, as if the developers intended for only the most persistent or fortunate trainers to discover it. Its obscurity was further deepened by the lack of an evolution, leaving players puzzled as to its true purpose. The Pokédex entries consistently describe it as feeding on fear, often startling people with cries or pulling pranks to cause unease. Few notice that these entries vary subtly by version. In some, it is portrayed as mischievous, more a prankster than a predator. In others, the tone is darker, suggesting it drains life energy through fright. These tonal shifts reflect the difficulty of categorizing it. Was it a trickster or a menace? That uncertainty became part of its identity. Design inspiration can be traced to mythological figures such as banshees, ghostly women whose wails foretold death. The red beads around its neck add an extra layer of symbolism, resembling protective talismans meant to ward off spirits. The contradiction of a ghost wearing protective charms may have been intentional irony, a subtle joke from the design team. This dual symbolism is rarely discussed, but enriches the reading of its design. Its competitive presence was minimal in early games, but shiny hunters took note of its color palette. In shiny form, the ghost shifts to a pale greenish hue, a transformation that felt both eerie and ethereal. Unlike shinies that produced garish results, this one looked almost spectral, as if its designers had quietly aligned the shiny palette with its ghostly lore. The trading card game also reflected its obscurity. Cards featuring this Pokémon were relatively rare and often leaned into surreal artwork, with depictions of it floating through cavernous or dreamlike spaces. Collectors recall these cards for their unusual atmosphere, which stood apart from more grounded depictions of other Pokémondae. Community myths soon surrounded it. Because of its rarity in gold and silver, players speculated that encountering one required special steps, walking a certain number of steps in darkness, or waiting until midnight in-game. None of these mechanics were real, but they reflect how the creature's scarcity made players invent rituals to summon it. In this sense, the myths surrounding it became part of its lore, adding to its identity as a Pokémon of whispers and secrets. Ultimately, the obscurity of this spirit lies in its rare appearances, its folklore-inspired design, and the community myths it inspired. It may not have been central to the story of Johto, but its presence lingers like a voice in the dark, easily missed, yet unforgettable once encountered. In the 4th generation, the solitary Banshee of Johto finally received an evolution that cemented its spectral reputation. That Pokémon is Mismagius. Draped in a flowing cloak-like body and wearing what looks like a pointed witch's hat, it carried forward the eerie cries of its predecessor, but added an entirely new layer of mythic resonance. Introduced in Diamond and Pearl, this ghost stood out immediately for its design. The witch-like silhouette made it one of the most overtly magical creatures in the franchise. Yet its Pokédex entries did not frame it as a traditional witch. Instead, they described it as using chants and incantations to inflict curses or bring happiness, depending on its mood. Few fans noticed the duality of those entries. This spirit was as likely to bless as to curse. That rare balance between benevolence and malice makes it unusual among ghosts, which are often portrayed solely as frightening. Its design inspirations are themselves obscure. The pointed hat on its head echoes imagery of witches, but some design notes suggest influence from traditional depictions of sorcerers' familiars, as well as Yurei spirits in Japanese folklore. The way its body flares into tendrils resembles old woodblock art of floating phantoms, grounding it in cultural iconography. By blending Western witchcraft and Eastern ghost imagery, the design team created a hybrid that felt simultaneously familiar and alien. Competitively, this Pokemon carved a niche as a fast special attacker, though it never dominated. Its shiny form, however, fascinated players. The cloak shifted from purple to a striking golden color, almost suggesting a royal sorceress rather than a dark enchantress. This shiny palette was so distinct that it became one of the more hunted shinies of its generation. Unlike its predecessor's more muted hue shift, this form embraced spectacle. The trading card game offered some of the most surreal depictions of this ghost. Certain Japanese exclusive cards portrayed it surrounded by glowing runes, emphasizing the chanting and spellcasting aspects of its lore. Collectors often note these as some of the most atmospheric ghost-type artworks, distinct even within a set full of dramatic designs. Community myths attach themselves to it as well. Some players speculated that using it in contests or musicals influenced results more than usual, citing its ties to singing. Others believed that evolving a Misdreavus during specific lunar phases in-game altered its stats or shiny odds. None of these were true, but they reveal how the creature's association with spells and chants led players to imagine mystical mechanics hidden in the code. In terms of cultural presence, this Pokemon often receives less attention than other ghosts, yet its design has quietly influenced fan interpretations. Many see it as a bridge between playful ghosts like Haunter and darker entities like Spiritomb, embodying both whimsy and menace. Its ability to curse and bless makes it unusually balanced, a reminder that not all spirits are wholly evil. Ultimately, the obscurity of this evolution lies in the subtleties of its design inspirations, the myths it inspired, and its understated role in competitive and collectible spheres. Cloaked in flowing fabric and muttering unseen incantations, Mismagius embodies the side of ghosts that whispers rather than screams, enchanting those who take the time to listen. Among the ghosts born from human neglect rather than natural mystery, one stands out for its eerie origin as a discarded toy. That Pokemon is Banette. With its zipper mouth, jagged grin, and lore of vengeance, it embodies a uniquely unsettling side of the ghost type. Yet hidden beneath its spooky surface are obscure details that make its history even richer. According to Pokédex lore, this Pokemon originates from an abandoned doll that grew resentful after being thrown away. This concept is directly tied to Japanese folklore surrounding Tsukumogami objects that come to life after long use or mistreatment. The idea of a child's doll gaining consciousness through anger is both frightening and sympathetic, and the developers leaned heavily into this theme. What is often overlooked is that Banette's Pokédex descriptions vary in tone depending on the generation. Some emphasize its role as a vengeful spirit, while others suggest that if treated kindly, it can lose its grudge. This duality between horror and redemption is rarely discussed, but adds nuance to its character. Its design itself hides subtle symbolism. The zipper mouth may represent both silence and repression, as though the doll's voice was forcibly closed. When it opens in animations, the effect is startling, implying the release of pent-up rage. Early sprites even accentuated this by drawing the zipper partially unfastened, a small but deliberate detail that captured the sense of something breaking free. Shiny hunters have long admired this Pokemon because its shiny palette is bright neon green, one of the most dramatic ghost-type shifts. The jarring color not only made it easy to spot, but also symbolized the unnatural nature of its existence. Unlike subtle shinies that blend in, this one practically shouted its difference, reinforcing the sense that Banette is something aberrant. The trading card game also leaned into its unsettling lore. Several Japanese exclusive artworks depicted it in dimly lit rooms, sometimes surrounded by discarded toys or broken objects. These visual cues deepen the impression that it is tied to human neglect and memory. Collectors often point to these artworks as some of the eeriest ghost depictions outside of Spiritomb. Community myths arose quickly around this Pokémonday. Some players claimed that naming it after the child who once owned the doll would unlock secret abilities. Others speculated that evolving it under a full moon changed its nature, turning it benevolent rather than vengeful. None of these ideas had any basis in the code, but they reflect how easily players wove folklore into its story. Competitively, it achieved new relevance with the introduction of Mega Evolution. Its Mega form exaggerated the zipper motif, with the body splitting open into jagged seams. This design amplified the themes of release and unleashed energy, making it one of the most terrifying ghost designs in the franchise. Shiny Mega Banette shifts to a stark white and pink palette, which became a sought-after status symbol in competitive play. Ultimately, what makes this Pokemon obscure is not simply its scary backstory, but the subtle layers hidden in its design, its dramatic shiny, and the folklore it inspired. It is more than a ghost, it is a memory of abandonment, a reminder that even forgotten objects can carry echoes of the past. Among the spirits of Hoenn, there is one whose single red eye peers out from a skull-like mask as it drifts silently through the night. That Pokemon is Duskull. With its floating, reaper-like form, it became a favorite for those drawn to the eerier side of Pokémonday. Yet beyond its simple design lies a web of obscure details and cultural echoes. Its Pokédex entries are among the most unsettling for a non-legendary. They describe it as following children who stay out too late, a chilling reminder of folktales used to scare kids into behaving. This is likely inspired by traditional ghost stories in Japan, where wandering spirits or lantern-bearing phantoms appear in the dark to frighten the careless. What many overlook is that some entries soften this portrayal in later generations, describing it more as mischievous than malevolent. This tonal shift reflects the franchise's gradual broadening to younger audiences, though the original menace still lingers. Design inspiration is tied closely to the imagery of Shinigami, or death spirits. Its skull mask and cloaked body strongly resemble depictions of Grim Reaper figures in both Japanese and Western folklore. What makes it unusual is the single glowing eye, a design choice that gives it an unblinking, lantern-like appearance. This eye has been interpreted by fans as a guiding light of the afterlife, though official sources remain vague. In terms of shiny palette, this Pokemon changes from gray to a dusky red. The eerie color shift reinforced its association with blood and twilight, making shiny hunting for it particularly atmospheric. Many players describe encountering one as surreal, with the red tint creating a ghost that looked even more ominous than its standard form. The trading card game often depicted this spirit in dark alleyways or misty graveyards, reinforcing its role as a wanderer of haunted places. Some Japanese card art even placed it beside Willow the Wisp Flames, subtly tying it to yokai traditions. Collectors view these cards as some of the more atmospheric ghost artworks, and they remain favorites for those who appreciate obscure references. Community myths around this Pokemon were plentiful. Some claimed that encountering it during real-world nighttime hours in-game increased shiny odds. Others speculated that if it fainted a child Pokemon in battle, special evolutions would occur. While none of these held truth, they demonstrate how its eerie Pokédex lore bled into player imagination, transforming mechanics into myths. In competitive terms, this ghost rarely made a mark on the metagame, but its evolution line became a popular choice in challenge runs and thematic teams. Trainers who raised it often commented on how its eerie design carried more emotional weight than many higher-tier battlers. Shiny versions, in particular, became tokens of dedication, as their appearance often required patience and luck. Ultimately, the obscurity of this Pokemon lies not in its battle strength, but in its cultural resonance. From its design rooted in folklore to its unsettling Pokédex claims and its eerie, shiny palette, it reflects the way Pokemon can embody deeper myths. Duskull may drift silently in the dark, but the stories that surround it ensure it remains a ghost, remembered long after the night ends. Among the strangest beings in the ghostly world, there is one that does not have a body in the usual sense, but rather a swirling mass of faces sealed to a keystone. That Pokemon is Spiritomb. With a backstory rooted in punishment and confinement, it stands as one of the darkest concepts in the series. Yet beyond the surface lies obscure lore that makes it even more unsettling. According to Pokédex entries, this spirit was bound to an odd keystone as punishment for misdeeds committed 500 years ago. What many overlook is that early translations slightly differed in how they described these misdeeds. Japanese entries often emphasized collective wrongdoing, describing it as a spirit born of many ill deeds. English localizations, however, leaned more toward the idea of individuals punished and trapped together. This subtle distinction changes the reading, whether it is a single, vengeful entity or a community of spirits bound as one. Its design itself is rich with symbolism. The swirling purple mass is filled with distorted faces, an unsettling detail often overlooked in the fast pace of battle. These faces recall imagery from traditional depictions of tormented souls in both Eastern and Western mythologies. The keystone it is bound to resembles ceremonial markers used in Shinto practices, reinforcing the idea that it is sealed by sacred ritual. The combination makes it one of the most overtly folkloric designs in Pokémonde. In Diamond and Pearl, obtaining this Pokemon required one of the most obscure methods in the franchise. Trainers had to place the odd keystone in the Hallowed Tower, then interact with 32 other players in the underground before it would appear. At the time, this was an immense challenge, as it demanded not only persistence, but also access to many other players. For years, many fans never saw it legitimately, cementing its reputation as a ghost bound not only in lore, but in mechanics. The shiny palette, shifting its purple body into a vivid green, is one of the most dramatic among ghosts. The eerie green glow made it look even more unnatural, as though the seal were corrupted. Shiny hunters who managed to obtain one often described it as a badge of dedication, especially before odds were reduced in later generations. The trading card game highlighted its sinister aura as well. Japanese artworks often depicted it emerging from cracked stones, surrounded by shadowy mist. Some cards even emphasized the faces more clearly than the games, drawing attention to the unsettling detail of multiple expressions fused into one being. Collectors value these for their eerie atmosphere, which captures the lore in ways text alone cannot. Community myths flourished around this Pokémonday. Some players believed that if you failed to fulfill its summoning ritual properly, cursed outcomes would occur in your game. Others claimed that its Pokédex number 442 was a coded reference to death, since the number 4 in Japanese culture is associated with bad luck. While not confirmed, these myths became part of its reputation, making it one of the most ominous ghosts. Ultimately, the obscurity of this spirit lies in its blend of myth, mechanics, and menace. It is not simply a ghost, but a punishment made manifest, a reminder that in the Pokémon world, even spirits can be judged and bound. Spiritomb endures as one of the darkest reflections of how folklore can shape design. Among ghosts tied to natural elements, one emerges from icy winds and frozen mountains, carrying with it the chill of folklore. That Pokémon is Froslass. With a body shaped like a kimono and a face resembling a no mask, it draws heavily from Japanese traditions while carving its own place in Pokémon history. Its Pokédex entries often describe it as freezing prey and displaying them like decorations. What many overlook is that these entries echo Yuki Onna myths, spirits of snow women who lure travelers to their doom in icy storms. The resemblance is not coincidental. The design widely draws from the Yuki Onna folklore of snow spirits, reflected in its mask-like face and kimono silhouette. An obscure detail lies in how it was introduced. Froslass was one of several evolutions added in the 4th generation to older Pokémonday. By giving Snorunt a new path, the designers created a ghost that contrasted starkly with its sibling evolution, Glalie. Where Glalie is a floating head of ice, Froslass is elegant, feminine, and spectral. This duality reflected the broader diamond and pearl theme of opposites and contrasts. The shiny palette of this Pokémon is particularly striking. Its normally pale blue and white body shifts to a deep purple, transforming the icy figure into something more sinister. This palette makes the shiny feel even closer to depictions of supernatural beings in folklore, where purple often symbolizes the boundary between life and death. Shiny hunters frequently target it for this reason, describing encounters as both beautiful and eerie. In the trading card game, Froslass often appears in scenes of snowy forests or frozen caves, reinforcing its role as a winter phantom. Japanese exclusive artworks sometimes depict it hovering among drifting snowflakes, highlighting its elegance rather than its menace. Collectors often view these cards as some of the most graceful ghost-type designs, balancing beauty with danger. Community myths quickly grew around this Pokémonday. Some players believed that encountering it during in-game snowstorms increased shiny odds. Others speculated that evolving a female Snorunt at certain times of day altered its appearance. None of these were real mechanics, but they reflect how strongly players tied it to superstition and folklore. Competitively, Froslass played a unique role as both a fast spike setter and a utility Pokémon with access to Destiny Bond. Trainers who used shiny versions often enjoyed the psychological effect, as the purple palette made it appear more intimidating. While it never dominated metagames, its presence was distinctive, and its lore added depth to its role. What makes this Pokémon particularly obscure is its delicate balance between menace and elegance. Unlike many ghosts portrayed as monstrous or mischievous, Froslass embodies beauty turned deadly. It draws from cultural myth, but presents it in a way that feels haunting rather than horrifying. For players who encountered it in the frozen routes of Sinnoh, it became an unforgettable presence. Ultimately, the obscurity of Froslass lies in its folkloric roots. its striking shiny palette, and the myths it inspired among fans. It is not just another ghost, it is a spirit of snow and silence, carrying with it centuries of cultural echoes, drifting quietly through the frozen night. Among the many ghosts tied to objects, one burns with a light that is said to consume the spirits of the departed. That Pokemon is Chandelure. With its elegant chandelier form and eerie violet flames, it is one of the most thematically chilling designs in the franchise. Yet beneath the surface of its fame lie obscure details that deepen its ghostly identity. According to the Pokédex, this being's flames do not burn the body but rather the spirit, leaving behind husks devoid of will. What many overlook is how this description varies across generations. In some entries, it is framed as a predator of souls, actively consuming them. In others, the language is softened, focusing on the mesmerizing effect of its flames. These shifts mirror the franchise's evolving approach to tone-balancing horror with accessibility. Its design draws from Gothic architecture, specifically ornate chandeliers that once hung in European cathedrals and mansions. Yet there is also Japanese influence in its haunting flames, which resemble kitsunebi, or foxfire, a type of willow, the wisp said to lure travelers astray. By combining Western architecture with Eastern folklore, the design team created a hybrid aesthetic that feels both familiar and uncanny. An obscure detail lies in its placement within the Unova Pokédex. Its evolutionary line is found at Celestial Tower, tying it to mourning and memorials in Unova, a region that actually features several ghost lines. Many players overlooked how its habitat was carefully chosen. It resides in a bell tower filled with mourners and memorials, tying it directly to themes of mourning. The shiny palette of this Pokemon enhances its eeriness. Its violet flames shift to orange, making it resemble a traditional fire-lit chandelier. This reversal of expectations, turning ghostly blue fire into ordinary orange, feels symbolic, as if its spirit-consuming nature had been disguised as something mundane. Many shiny hunters interpret this as deliberate irony, though it may simply be the result of palette experimentation. In the trading card game, depictions often lean into its haunting elegance. Japanese artworks sometimes show it illuminating empty rooms or looming over staircases, imagery that suggests abandoned mansions or forgotten halls. Collectors often describe these as some of the most atmospheric ghost-type cards, capturing its theme of beauty, masking danger. Competitively, Chandelure's base, special attack of 145, set the benchmark for non-legendary ghost types for years. This made it a staple in certain formats, especially with its access to powerful fire and ghost moves. Shiny versions, glowing with orange flames, became prized in tournaments, not just for aesthetics, but as badges of patience and luck. Community myths also developed around it. Some players speculated that encountering it in Celestial Tower during in-game nighttime increased shiny odds, while others believed that fainting before a wild battle with it could trigger unique animations. None of these mechanics existed, but they reveal how strongly its lore encouraged superstition. Ultimately, the obscurity of this Pokemon lies not only in its design, but in the subtleties of its lore, its habitat, and the myths that cling to it. A chandelier that burns spirits rather than candles, it remains one of the most thematically haunting creatures, casting a light that is both mesmerizing and terrifying. Among the ghosts tied to ancient relics, one resembles a golden sarcophagus with glaring eyes and reaching shadowy arms. That Pokemon is Cofagrigus. Known for its eerie connection to tombs and curses, It blends archaeology with horror in ways that hide more obscure details than most realize. Its Pokédex descriptions consistently reference it devouring grave robbers, pulling them inside its coffin-like body. What is less known is how these entries were softened over time. In earlier games, it was described as literally eating humans, one of the darkest depictions in the series. Later entries avoided such explicit references, instead emphasizing curses or entrapment. This tonal evolution reflects how the franchise adjusted darker imagery for younger audiences. The design draws heavily from Egyptian sarcophagi, especially those gilded in gold with inlaid gems. The glaring eyes and painted smile mimic features of funerary masks meant to ward off evil spirits. Yet the addition of shadowy arms reaching outward introduces a supernatural twist, making the coffin itself a predator. This fusion of archaeology and ghostly horror is rarely discussed, but demonstrates how the design team combined historical objects with imaginative menace. An obscure fact is that its name once sparked censorship. In early English distributions of Black and White, the name triggered content filters on online services because it contained the letters Cofag, which were flagged as offensive in some contexts. This caused difficulty for players attempting to trade or battle with it online, an odd quirk that became a piece of trivia known only to longtime fans. Its shiny palette shifts the gold to a pale gray blue, making the coffin appear more weathered, as if aged by centuries. This subtle change enhances its archaeological theme, turning it from gleaming treasure to ancient relic. Shiny hunters appreciate the palette not only for rarity, but for how well it aligns with the lore of forgotten tombs. In the trading card game, Cofagrigus often appears emerging from cracked stone or surrounded by cursed hieroglyphs. Japanese exclusive artworks sometimes emphasize the multiple arms more dramatically, making it appear almost spider-like as it reaches for victims. Collectors prize these cards for their unsettling atmosphere, which captures the essence of its Pokédex entries. Competitively, this Pokémon was sometimes used as a defensive wall, particularly with its ability Mummy, which replaces an opponent's ability upon contact. While it never dominated formats, it had niche utility in disabling powerful abilities. Shiny versions in battle added intimidation, as the weathered look suggested a coffin pulled from a darker age. Community myths included speculation that Cofagrigus' design hinted at real-world curses, such as the infamous Curse of the Pharaohs. Some players believed fainting to it in the Relic Castle would reduce shiny odds for the rest of the session, as if the curse extended into the game's code. These superstitions had no basis, but reveal how strongly the design encouraged players to imagine hidden dangers. Ultimately, the obscurity of this Pokémon lies in its balance between history and horror. It is both a relic of human culture and a spectral predator, embodying myths of cursed tombs while inventing new folklore within the Pokémon world. Cofagrigus endures as one of the most unsettling reminders that the past may not always rest quietly. Among the many regional forms discovered in distant lands, one owl warrior embraced shadows, transforming from graceful archer to ghostly vigilante. That Pokémon is Decidueye. In Alola, this archer combines grass and ghost, cloaked like a hooded spirit of the forest. Hidden within this shift are obscure details that set it apart from almost every other regional variant. In its original incarnation, this line ended as a grass and ghost archer cloaked in feathers, resembling a hood. The Hisuian version, however, reinterpreted the design entirely, giving it a more rugged appearance with reddish plumage and a stronger focus on martial traits. What many overlook is how this transformation symbolized cultural adaptation. Where Alola emphasized stealth and precision, Hisui presented survival and ferocity. The spectral typing was not just an aesthetic flourish, it represented the danger and spirituality of a region where life and death blurred constantly. The Pokédex entries describe it as moving with eerie silence, its arrows guided by unseen forces. This imagery recalls depictions of ghostly archers in folklore, especially Japanese legends of warriors whose spirits lingered after death, still firing arrows in defense of their clans. The combination of owl imagery and martial ghost echoes creates a design steeped in symbolic meaning. One obscure detail lies in how this form was introduced in Legends Arceus. Unlike many regional forms tied to specific biomes, Hisuian Decidueye was directly tied to the cultural role of archery in Hisui's past. Players often overlook how its Pokédex description references the precision of its strikes, not just as hunting tools but as ceremonial actions, reinforcing the idea that this ghost was revered as much as feared. Its shiny palette is another layer of obscurity. Where the standard plumage is red and brown, the shiny shifts to green tones, creating a visual callback to its original Alolan form. This subtle connection suggests that the designers wanted shiny hunters to see continuity between the two versions, bridging regional variants through color alone. Many miss this symbolic tie, but it demonstrates the thought behind palette decisions. In competitive settings, this form played differently than its predecessor. Its grass, fighting typing, changed its resistances and weaknesses, making it more unpredictable in battle. While not always a top-tier choice, it became a favorite among thematic teams built around regional ghosts, its presence adding variety to a traditionally smaller type pool. Shiny versions, carrying the callback palette, were especially valued among collectors who appreciated the design's dual homage. The trading card game also embraced the form's spectral qualities. Japanese exclusive cards often depicted it drawing spectral arrows against misty backdrops, emphasizing its ghostly calm. Collectors admired these for their blend of elegance and menace, especially as they contrasted sharply with the more tropical depictions of its Alolan counterpart. Community myths grew quickly after its debut. Some players speculated that fainting to it in battle would cause arrows to appear in the overworld environment, or that evolving it in specific weather increased shiny odds. Though none of these were real mechanics, they highlight how the creature's ghostly martial lore inspired imagination. Ultimately, the obscurity of this regional form lies in its symbolism and subtle connections. It is more than just a palette swap or a stat adjustment. It represents how environments shape legends, how designs echo folklore, and how even regional forms can carry mythic weight. Hisuian Decidueye embodies survival, silence, and the spectral power of memory, standing apart as one of the most thematically rich forms in the series. Among the stranger spirits of Galar, one hides in plain sight inside an everyday object, blending whimsy with the uncanny. That Pokemon is Polteageist, a teapot inhabited by a ghostly presence. It is one of the most unusual designs of the 8th generation. Beneath its playful surface lie obscure details that make it far darker than many players initially realized. The Pokédex describes it as inhabiting chipped teapots, pouring itself into cups, and even allowing trusted trainers to sip its body as a form of bonding. What is often overlooked is how unsettling this actually island. The act of drinking part of a ghost blurs the line between nourishment and possession, adding an eerie undertone to what is framed as a quirky habit. This contradiction, playful on the surface, uncanny beneath, is what defines its obscurity. An obscure mechanical detail lies in its two separate forms, phony and authentic. Both phony and authentic forms exist, identified by a tiny stamp on the underside. Authentic is significantly rarer in normal encounters, and the form is set at the Synestia stage. This distinction is one of the most obscure mechanics in the franchise, and many casual trainers remain unaware that the two forms even exist. The design draws heavily from cultural traditions of haunted objects, especially the idea of Tsukumogami tools and vessels gaining spirits after years of use. By tying this concept to the very British imagery of tea culture, the developers created a design that fuses Japanese folklore with Galarian identity. The result is both comedic and uncanny, a ghost that fits seamlessly into cultural storytelling. Its shiny form adds another layer of rarity. The body of the ghost changes from purple to a pale green, making it appear almost like mold spreading within the pot. This subtle yet grotesque change plays into its eerie nature, making shiny hunting for it even more thematically resonant. Shiny collectors often describe the discovery as one of the most satisfying in the region, not just for odds, but for symbolism. In the trading card game, depictions emphasize its playful eeriness. Some Japanese exclusive cards show it spilling tea mischievously, while others highlight the authentic mark at the bottom of the pot. Collectors prize these for their subtle nods to the in-game rarity mechanic, making them unusually faithful to obscure game details. Community myths sprang up immediately after its debut. Some claimed that using the creature in max raid battles increased the odds of finding authentic forms, while others believed that fainting with one in the party allowed it to possess other items. None of these were true, but they illustrate how the playful eeriness of its design inspired layers of superstition. Competitively, this ghost had niche utility thanks to its ability weak armor and access to shell smash, allowing it to sweep teams unexpectedly. Shiny versions, with their sickly green interiors, became favorite showcases among competitive collectors, emphasizing rarity and obscurity. Ultimately, the obscurity of Polteageist lies in its duality. It is both playful and unsettling, both common and vanishingly rare, both a teapot and a spirit. By blending folklore, cultural imagery, and hidden mechanics, it stands as one of the most thematically strange ghosts in the series, pouring out secrets with every encounter. Among the newest spirits introduced in Paldea, one appears as a small dog with a flickering candle atop its head, a companion equal parts comforting and eerie. That Pokemon is Greavard. Though its design may seem simple at first glance, hidden details within its lore and mechanics reveal layers of obscurity that make it one of the most quietly unsettling ghosts of recent years. Its Pokédex entries describe it as being friendly and affectionate, often following trainers it takes a liking to. Yet behind this gentleness lies a darker twist. Prolonged exposure to its company can sap a person's life force, leaving them exhausted. This contradiction between the warmth of companionship and the danger of its presence adds an unusual depth. What makes this obscure is how rarely the series leans into themes of harm caused unintentionally. Unlike malevolent ghosts that curse deliberately, this spirit simply exists in a way that drains those around it. Design inspiration appears to draw from folklore about ghostly dogs, which appear across many cultures. In England, myths of the Black Dog describe spectral hounds that haunt graveyards, while in Japan, canine spirits were sometimes believed to guard sacred grounds The candle atop its head ties into broader ghostly motifs of guiding lights, resembling willow, the wisps or grave candles said to mark haunted sites. By combining the loyal image of a dog with funereal motifs, the design balances comfort and unease. An obscure detail lies in how it is found. In Paldea, this ghost emerges from the ground like a candle rising from a grave, startling many first-time players. Unlike most Pokemon that wander visibly, this one ambushes trainers in a way that feels more like a horror game mechanic than a traditional encounter. Many players shared stories of being startled by it, suddenly leaping from beneath their feet, reinforcing its identity as a creature meant to surprise as much as to charm. Its shiny palette adds to its obscurity. The normally pale body shifts to a warmer brown shade, making the candle atop its head stand out even more starkly. Some players interpret this as symbolic of burned wood or aged bones, tying it closer to themes of death and decay. While the change is not as dramatic as other ghost shinies, the symbolism makes it uniquely resonant. In the trading card game, early depictions highlighted its gentler side, showing it playfully wagging its spectral tail. Yet Japanese exclusive artwork leaned into eerier imagery, placing it in graveyards with flickering candlelight. This duality mirrored its lore, a friendly companion whose presence could still unsettle. Collectors often cite these cards as examples of how artwork can emphasize different facets of a design. Community myths quickly emerged. Some players speculated that evolving it into Houndstone under specific weather conditions altered the glow of the candle. Others believed that fainting beside it in battle caused unusual overworld effects. None of these mechanics exist, yet the persistence of such rumors shows how readily fans imbued this seemingly simple Pokemon with mystery. In competitive play, Greavard and its evolution carried a unique niche thanks to the move Last Respects, which grows stronger based on the number of fainted allies. This gave it unexpected power in specific circumstances, turning a small, friendly-looking ghost dog into a formidable force. Shiny versions became especially prized among competitive collectors, as the subdued color palette, paired with the devastating move, created a striking contrast between appearance and potential. Ultimately, the obscurity of this spirit lies in the way it blends opposites. It is affectionate yet dangerous, playful yet frightening, common yet mysterious. Emerging from the graves of Paldea with its flickering candle, it reminds players that even the friendliest of ghosts carry shadows within them. For those who take the time to look closer, Greavard is not just a spectral puppy. It is a symbol of how Pokemon continues to weave folklore, mechanics, and subtle design into creatures that linger in both memory and myth.